esports has ruined gaming. Unlike the videos I've made in the past, this is the one that I haven't really touched upon at all. But it is something that I have been seeing in the past 5 or 10 years. A lot of games nowadays have become more esports oriented, more so than they were in the past. One could make the argument, well, I mean, we've had esports in the past, such as Halo 2 MLG, and then Smash Brothers Melee tournaments have been around for God knows how long. But hell, even Evo was a thing back in the Evo that we know of today started all the way back in 2004. So it's not something like this isn't new. But I will say that compared to back then, in the past 10 years, I feel that esports titles, or at least the focus on esports, is more apparent nowadays compared to back in the day. Back in the day, it's like there isn't quite a lot going on, but now, Jesus Christ, CS:GO tournaments, Dota 2 tournaments, League of Legends tournaments, Overwatch League, Call of Duty League, Halo, that Halo thing. Jesus Christ! Honestly, I feel that isn't this a little too much? I just don't understand why there's a need for all these esports to exist.
Imagine this for a second: an arena full of excited fans waiting to watch their favorite video game, but this hyper-competitive, high-octane electronic sport these guys are playing isn't doing too hot right now. It's been dominated by one incredibly powerful strategy, and the game devolves into long and boring matches with no variation. The commentators, passionate and desperate to keep the game alive, are trying to find any breadcrumb of excitement that they can, but they know that it's a futile effort. As the tournament goes on, people start to leave the arena, sponsors lose faith in the game, and eventually, the developer's baby and work of passion has been forced to shut down. This scenario is a game developer's absolute worst nightmare, especially in an era where the expectation is that every new multiplayer game release eventually turns into a hyper-competitive esport. But I feel like that expectation has clouded the judgment of not just a wide part of the gaming community, but even the developers of these games themselves. And I can't help but feel like both sides are just missing the point. Just because a game comes out with a multiplayer mode in it doesn't mean it has what it takes to be a competitive game. Otherwise, we'd be seeing $1 million Mario Kart tournaments crop up everywhere.
You're damn right. Thank God someone actually spoke the truth, because I'm actually getting super annoyed of multiplayer games nowadays. Like this is the reason why I hate multiplayer games nowadays. There's a very good reason why I don't play Tower of Fantasy all that much. As much as I do like Tower of Fantasy, I really hated the PvP aspect of it, and it's also one of the reasons why I got turned off from other multiplayer games like Halo and stuff, because quite honestly, I feel that it's become more competitive. That the competitive nature of games is more apparent nowadays compared to back in the day. There's no denying that competition is something that fuels games, be it in an industry level or something that's more personal, like couch competitions. Basically, having friends over just to play Mario Party, whatever. But my issue regarding multiplayer games nowadays is there has to be some incentive just to play multiplayer games, be it battle passes or trying to get to the top of the leaderboards. And I shit you not, every single session of Halo Infinite that I've ever played was nothing but sweat fests. I don't know when this happened. I don't think this has ever happened for Halo 5, or at least not as much as it used to be. I might be misremembering something, but I don't think that Halo 5 ended up being a sweat fest compared to the insurmountable amount of sweat that produced it in Halo Infinite. Like it's like everyone is playing it for the championship league. Like, dude, this is getting a little ridiculous now. Maybe it's age, maybe it's maybe I'm not as proficient in games that I used to be anymore, but Jesus, man.
So what sets Mario Kart apart from, say, League of Legends or Street Fighter? And what makes a good esport? Well, to answer that question, I'll go through the reasons people seem to think are true, but really aren't. There's a common notion that rampant dev support is needed for a game to be successful in a tournament setting. That without millions of dollars from the developers and Coca-Cola sponsorships at every event, then your game is just going to die. In reality though, all the developer support can really do is artificially make the game seem like it's alive, when it very likely would be abandoned if there wasn't any monetary incentive to play competitively. Games like Fortnite had to learn this the hard way, because although the Fortnite World Cup had the biggest prize pool in eSports history and a massive arena full of rabid children, it still couldn't escape the fact that the game itself doesn't make for a good viewing experience, because all you see is a battle of who gets the luckiest with their weapon drops and which player can build a tower the fastest instead of actually shooting the other guy. All you have to do to disprove this is look at the numerous examples where games have had large and passionate communities with little to no dev support, such as the Smash community and pretty much the entire early FGC. These
Yeah.
games were, or still are, alive and kicking, with only the
Very
passion of a
much.
few players
You're damn
and grassroots
right.
crowdfunding efforts.
As someone who was into fighting games around 2011 and beyond, this speaks to me in a level beyond what I can explain. In my opinion, fighting game esports in most cases are like the hypest shit I could think of. I know it, you know it, everybody knows it. You're damn right.
Efforts to keep tournaments running. Smash especially shows this fully, considering Nintendo has tried to kill its competitive scene in every way imaginable.
The underground scene for Smash Brothers
Some
is
people
insane.
are going to say that fighting game tournaments have had full developer support and big sponsorships for about a decade now. So I can't use them as an example because they're using the same things to grow themselves that I say don't grow esports. And although that is true, the devs wouldn't have done much to grow the FGC in the first place if it hadn't had that backbone of passionate grassroots support from the 90s and 2000s.
That's true. That is true. A lot of the old guard back in the day, well, if you know the names, you know the names. They managed to make Evo what it is now. Nowadays, well, I mean, if you know the story behind a few of the founders of Evo, you might have an idea of why that's not a good thing right now. But regardless, though, a lot of fighting games tournaments were built on the idea of grassroots. That's the reason why that the FGC is far more exciting to me, because the idea of FGCs came from a local level and just expanded since then.
Dev support simply can't prop up a bad esport, and similarly, adding metric shit tons of content to a game through patches isn't going to do that either. Frequent battle passes, skins, new maps, weapons and characters are a common thing to see.
Hey, it's Genshin. Wait, is this the reason why you wanted me to you wanted me to react to this?
Modern games, and they admittedly can be a great way to keep adding to a great base game, refining the experience to its absolute best. But they are only at their most effective if there aren't any other glaring issues outside of the game's content. It doesn't matter how many skins and characters Multiverses adds, it's not going to fix the server connectivity issues and the lack of modes other than online versus. And you can see the results of that in its dramatic drop in players since release. If you want a modern game,
you know, it's a shame that Multiverses dropped in player base, because I do think that the game itself is legitimately good. It's actually I did play it for a bit, and for a Smash clone, it's good. It's pretty good. That's more than I can say compared to that Nicktoons game.
For an example, take CSGO, a game that has had periods of years go by with little to no significant additions to content, at least until Valorant came out. And it is still one of the biggest and most beloved esports of all time. Having too little content makes
That really
it
just
feel
pulled from the
shallow and
YouTube Home
unfinished
Hub.
short,
Oh, okay.
but adding too much content can make a game feel bloated or even negatively impact the game experience if the new map or weapon favors a degenerate strategy. Smash 4 was a perfectly fine game that received constant updates and new stages and characters, and these characters added a lot to the game. However, the final DLC character, Bayonetta, ended up ruining the game so badly that Nintendo shipped out an emergency last-minute patch to fix her. which didn't end up doing much, so after they abandoned the game, it turned into such a toxic experience that two 15-year-olds decided to have a standoff in EVO Grand Finals.
Bro, what is going on? What is this? I don't know. I was stalling for time.
And I know what you're thinking. Ardrid, if there's something degen in a game, they should just nerf it. And I fully agree, but let's focus on that point a little more. Because all of these big company sponsorships and content altering patches pale in comparison to the most important thing that everyone says a good esport must have. The elusive and ever-desired concept of balance. It's the idea that as many options in the game should be viable at the highest levels of play, and through that, the metagame will be healthy and intriguing for the players, and a fascinating experience to watch for the viewers at home. Balancing a game is always tough, and there's a ton of different philosophies you can use to accomplish it. But the one that has propped up over the last few years is the idea of perfect balance. That everything should be as equal as possible for a game to be any fun competitive.
Where nothing is too strong or too weak.
If you look at the history, you'll see way too many examples of beloved games that have had varying levels of balance. Smash Bros. Melee, Tekken Tag Tournament 1, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. All of these games are considered to be some of the greatest competitive games in their genre, yet have completely unbalanced rosters where only a small fraction of the characters available to you are viable in tournament play.
You're damn right.
Okay, at this point, some of you might be thinking something like, this guy is such a dumbass. He's making it seem like none of these things matter with anecdotal examples of games that came out 20 years ago that didn't have any of those things.
Who the hell said that? Who the hell said that? I want to smack him in the face if they actually said that. What do you mean it doesn't matter?
These games didn't have the same standards or lofty expectations that we have now, nor do they have the same level of options that we do now. Players at the time probably just stuck with their game despite being unbalanced or bloated or whatever, right? Wrong.
I'd argue that the unbalanced nature of most of these games are where the fun really is, and I feel that balancing some of the content that's even in the game, or at least an attempt to do so, would ruin the experience. It would ruin the fun factor of said game.
Wait. No! Allow me to disprove that statement with another anecdotal example. The player-based transition from Tekken Tag Tournament 1 to Tekken 4, or the attempted transition, I should say. Let's set the scene. Tekken Tag 1 was considered to be the absolute gold standard of the Tekken series. The pro players loved it, and in just a little over a year, they would be able to play the game's eagerly anticipated sequel, Tekken 4. They waited until the game's release month in the arcades of July 2001, and when they got their hands on it, they hated it. It was slow and weird, and the stages had walls.
Who's this guy? He sounds familiar. Let me see here. YouTuber's name is Ardrid.
And stuff now, although in hindsight they were really cool. And to make matters worse, it had an equally as unbalanced roster as Tag 1, with new character Steve and especially returning fighter Jin being incredibly oppressive. Tekken 4 matches quickly devolved into Jin versus Jin matches, and the game was as divisive as it could have possibly been. Based on this guy's assumption earlier, you'd think that these players would stick with Tekken 4 as this was 2001 and there weren't as many options or as high expectations as we have now for games. Well, actually, the exact opposite happened. After a while of trying to make Tekken 4 work, many Tekken players simply either went back to the horribly unbalanced Tekken Tag 1 or transitioned to other fighting games. Many decided to switch to Namco's other 3D fighter series that had just released a new entry,
Soul Calibur 2.
Soul Calibur 2.
Yep.
A game where the entire roster seemed to be insanely cheap. So why did they go back? Aren't Tekken Tag 1 and Soul Calibur 2 just as bad as Tekken 4 when it comes to cheap characters and strategies? What was the difference between these games that made people hate Tekken 4 so much yet adore Tag 1 and Soul Calibur 2?
Well, I mean, for Soul Calibur 2, I could think of various reasons. The one being that about the exclusive characters in their respective platforms, with GameCube getting Link from Legend of Zelda, and then PlayStation 2 getting Heihachi, and then Xbox getting, for some godforsaken reason, Spawn from the Spawn comics. But I'd argue that's one of the reasons. But yeah, but honestly though, Soul Calibur 2 is just a fun game overall.
Well, to answer that question, I think it's finally time to get into the actual things that I think create a great and successful esport. 1. The game needs to be easy to understand and watch. It doesn't necessarily have to be fast paced, but what it does have to be is something that even someone who has never even seen the game before can look at and understand just from a glance. The game's objectives, important elements such as health and damage, and even strategies need to be as easy to understand as possible. As an easy to understand game is going to have a much simpler time bringing in new players than a visual clusterfuck like Fortnite's pro scene. Overwatch has consistently run into this problem with its esports circuit too, where there are just so many particle effects and stuff happening on screen with no downtime whatsoever that it's overwhelming for people who don't understand the game inside and out. 2. A competent and passionate community.
It sounds like this one reviewer I know, never knows best.
I'm not
he
talking
did
about some
a long ass
video
on Genshin once.
I'm talking about someone from the community of their game that's passionate and hardworking. Usually someone who was a die-hard player themselves who transitioned into TOing. Esports for the most part is not a very profitable industry. So to put on the greatest events on a frequent basis, you need people who are willing to lose money on running tournaments simply for the love of the game. It's what built the early days of Counter-Strike, the FGC, and pretty much every esport that stood the test of time today.
Again, going back into the grassroots topic I was talking about earlier, you need to have people that are passionate enough to run these tournaments, and then they just grow naturally. They just grow naturally if the passion is there. If the passion is even big enough to warrant that kind of competition. That's why I think fighting games are a prime example of that. It's naturally competitive.
If your game's competitive scene can't at some point sustain itself on passion alone, then it has little hope of succeeding in a wider context.
Yep.
And 3, this one is the most important one. The game's mechanics need to be as perfectly balanced as possible. Some of you are going to say that I'm contradicting myself here, as I literally just said that balance wasn't important, but let's make a key distinction here. All of the examples I showed of unbalanced games gaining esports success were unbalanced in their rosters, their weapons, their specific elements in which you interact with the game mechanics. The reason that people preferred Tekken Tag 1 to Tekken 4 despite both games having horribly unbalanced rosters was because Tekken Tag 1's core game mechanics were simply much more balanced than Tekken 4's. Even if Steve and Jin were nerfed into oblivion in Tekken 4, the game would have died anyway because of its broken wall system and stupidly easy jab pressure out of one-frame sidewalks. It wouldn't matter if Bayonetta was never added into Smash 4, because the game's over-reliance on shielding as an approach option and the strength of grabs would have eventually killed it anyway. And no matter how many balance patches and new heroes they added to Overwatch 1, it didn't stop the massive amount of stuns and the 2-tank meta from scaring people away.
Yep.
After those things were fixed in Overwatch 2, you can easily see just how much larger and passionate the community has gotten over that game.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the game being free to play for Overwatch 2 also helps a little bit. But overall, in terms of balance, it's a little better compared to the first iteration.
Character or weapon is overpowered, there are always going to be players who will avoid them by using different characters or weapons. Low tier heroes are a thing in every game, but when the core gameplay mechanics heavily favour a particular strat or playstyle, what are they going to do? Avoid the mechanics? Avoiding the game's mechanics is basically the same thing as not playing the game at all. So from that perspective, it's obvious just how important a balanced core gameplay loop is. In that sense, the metrics for what make a good esport are very similar to what makes a good game in general. Nobody wants to play a platformer where running and jumping are slow after all. But the problem is, in the pursuit of this esports dream and eternal relevancy, a lot of developers seem to lose sight of that fact. Think about the biggest live service games in the world right now. League of Legends, Valorant, Apex Legends. All of these games seem to be in good states now, but where will they be in 20 years? Will they even be around in 20 years? If their level of success stays the same, then probably, but I guarantee you the obsession that these games' devs have with constant content updates and frequent balance patches will mean that the Apex of today will look nothing like the Apex of 2042.
It's
what
possible.
if these changes actually made the game worse rather than better?
Which can
What will you do
FTP say
then?
PUBG
Play
from
an
a
older
certain
version
Doom.
of the game?
Yeah.
This isn't
It
Minecraft
helps.
version swapping. These games require you to be online in order to play them. So it's ride or die with the current version until the devs fix it. And if the game's servers get shut down...
How appropriate is it that both Avengers and Knockout City are up here? Because when I did that live service video, it was around the time when I found out that both Knockout City and Marvel's Avengers support and live service, the respective live service, is shutting down in some form. Marvel's Avengers will be would not be receiving any more content updates, but the servers are still going to be up. Whereas for Knockout City, last I recall, the game is shutting down and no one would be able to access the game. I don't remember if it was this or if it was Rumbleverse that the developer stated that they're going to find a way to make sure to get the switch to make sure to switch from server-based matches to P2P matches. So that way the only thing that relies on the only way to play a Knockout City is just through, I believe, either private server, a lot of it is just going to be peer-to-peer based. So hopefully that would mean that accessing the content in Knockout City would be a little easier. Unfortunately, not a lot of games have that kind of luxury or time.
You are never playing
Apex
this
Mobile's
game
getting shut
again.
down this year. Yeah, it is.
When talking about game preservation, everyone mentions the old classics that require aging hardware to run. But what about the hundreds of live service games that require massive servers to run and have had so many content patches that the version of the game you played as a kid may not even be available anymore? I don't think that esports itself has ruined gaming. Far from it. I love esports myself, but the mentality and glorification of esports that it puts the community and devs into definitely has. It isn't because ranked has caused tryhards to pop up everywhere and I can't 360 no-scope noobs anymore like back in the good old Modern Warfare 2 days, but because game devs all over the world look at the prestige and deep competitive history of games like League of Legends and Street Fighter, and they lust for it so hard that they fail to see the mountain that they had to climb to reach that peak. And the true reasons why people play those games is that they are amazing, mechanically well-balanced experiences that allow for deep and engrossing gameplay. It's not million-dollar prize pools and frequent content updates. And the furious chase of this ideal is simply not smart for most games that aren't really made for esports. A competitive scene has to be gradually built by die-hard fans out of true passion for the game. And just like how you can lead a horse to water and you can't make it drink, you simply can't force a game to be an esport. And as long as the gaming community keeps trying to do that, more and more games will fail to reach their true potential.
Yep, you are correct, sir. Like I actually agree. I definitely agree with a lot of this because I do feel that the pursuit of trying to regulate a game into an esport is far more common nowadays compared to how it was back in the day, back 10 years ago or so. And it's because of all of the, and it's because of the pursuit of becoming not just a live service, but also become an esports on top of it. It's what's killing a lot of these games that were around at least a year or two ago. Whether it's thankful or not, it seems like that mentality of every single game got to be an esports is dying down a little, just a teeny bit. There are games that are currently gonna go out of service, or they're just gonna all shut down. It's something that is at least a bit of a sunny patch in a dark and cloudy sky. In order for the esports scene to grow, they need to be absolutely certain that it's what the community wants. If it's not what the community wants, then why bother implementing esports to begin with? All I'm saying is, be like Tekken, be like Street Fighter, be like Mortal Kombat. Grow your audience first, and then go from there. If the passion ain't there, why bother?